Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Bunk and I am going to be wrapping things up, talking about the last category of our findings, and I will also discuss conclusions and implications. We had a third set of responses that we categorized as student characteristics. In other words, what students think and feel about online learning depends on the student. So a few categories that emerged here were flexibility and learning style, better for shy and introverted students, and lack of student investment. I'm going to share some more specifics about the first two bullet points. The last bullet point is basically just these were responses where students said, I don't feel invested in this course. I don't feel like I need to put anything into this. So this was more of the negative side of it. That students don't feel like they need to do as well, or that they don't feel as connected with the online courses compared to face-to-face. But I want to talk about the other two in a little bit more detail, which are slightly more on the positive side. So flexibility and learning style. Here, students were talking about the importance of flexibility about when, where, and how the work is done. And this was derived from students who emphasize self-paced learning and an independent learning style. So a lot of students talked about online learning in a very positive way, and the reason for this being positive was about this flexibility. When do I do the work? I can choose when. It doesn't have to be during a set schedule. Where, same thing. I don't have to be in a particular place in order to do it. And then also the how, that it gives me flexibility to determine how the work actually gets done. So this is to say that to the extent that students are self-paced learners and value independent learning, or self-motivated to learn, that online may be very, very good for them. Better for shy or introverted students. We have another extra normal video to show you, so I'm going to do that one and have an extra normal character do this.
I am a shy person, and I don't normally speak out in class, especially in response to another student. I would never disagree with someone in class, so an online aspect makes this part better for me. I feel that I am able to actually speak my mind through the computer and not worry about someone judging my every spoken word in class. Through typing, I am able to take my time to think out my response or erase my previous thought in order to rewrite my answer.
So I really like this response for a number of reasons. Number one, and maybe the less obvious reason, but that what really stood out to me was the language that this student used, almost anthropomorphizing computers. I'm able to speak my mind through the computer. Through typing, I'm able to take my time to think out my responses. So what's really interesting here to me is that this particular student is assigning human qualities to computers, but in a very good way. And I think this is an excellent counterpoint to folks who might say that online learning would never work because computers are so impersonal. They're these cold machines, cold in a, not physically cold, but just sort of non-interpersonal machines. How can they actually, help us to connect with one another? And I think that this is partially a generational thing, and also maybe partially based on people's experience with online interactions. Those of us, for example, who might have dated online or met a significant other online can certainly attest to the fact that computers can be used as a vehicle for interpersonal relationships. So I thought it was really interesting that the student used this language. More to the point though, better for shy or introverted students, that that particular kinds of students may actually prefer online learning because they want to take the time to think through their thoughts and not be on the spot and have to talk right now. That may make them clam up and be more shy and more quiet. So this is definitely an opportunity, and is one way that I think online learning is a good thing, a very good thing, because it allows more voices to come through. Those voices of the shy and introverted students who may not typically speak up in class. Conclusions. So, thoughts and feelings matter. Tying it back to what we originally talked about, that this was one of our goals, to show that looking at this touchy-feely aspect of online learning, not simply focusing or just focusing on hard learning outcomes and performance-based outcomes, that it's really important to consider thoughts and feelings as well. They can be very illuminative. Individual differences matter as well, so I just talked about that in terms of the shy and introverted students, and also students who are more independent learners, self-driven learners, that for these particular kinds of people, online learning may be very well suited for them. Context matters as well. Particular students, like say students who need to commute, or non-traditional students who have a family, any student who finds themselves in the context where that flexibility is important, online learning can be very, very good for them as well. It's not as clear as face-to-face is always better. That would be a take-home that I would say that comes from our study, that we can't always say that face-to-face learning is better. We can't always say that online learning is better. All of these things matter. Individual differences, context, we need to take them into account. Practical implications. One of our goals was to translate our findings into actionable knowledge. So with that, point number 1, think carefully about the incorporation of discussion boards. One of the very interesting things that we found was this realization that, 2020 hindsight, maybe we should have realized though, that students may not take discussion boards so seriously. That they, for example, may just find the easiest comment to respond to and just say I agree and move on with their lives, and not actually use discussion boards in ways that we would hope to use them, like for example for critical thinking. So I'm not saying get rid of discussion boards. I think students like them. Anecdotal evidence, and from the evidence from this data too, that there's certainly positive aspects of discussion boards, but think carefully about incorporating them. If you want to just use them for helping students to get to know one another, and that's it, just talking to one another, sort of igniting that student-student interaction, I think discussion boards are wonderful for that. But if you want to use it for critical thinking, then the guidelines have to be very, very straightforward and clear, and I think that the instructor needs to play a very important role there to actually get that critical thinking happening, or else you're just going to get people agreeing with one another. That could be something that happens. So think carefully about how and why you're using discussion boards in your online class. Blended hybrid classes, best of both worlds, ? We had a lot of positive comments in our data related to blended courses and hybrid classes. Students love them. From anecdotal evidence, from my own experience, and from the faculty that I've known that have taught hybrid classes, they love them too. But we need to know more about this though. So what is it about hybrid classes? What are best practices in hybrid classes? So maybe right now we can say it's the best of both worlds, but let's leave the question mark there so that we can keep doing better. Be organized and give clear guidelines. This is so important, especially if it's 100% online class. You're not there, the instructor's not there to provide that in-person guidance. So it's super important to be organized and give clear guidelines. Create an online persona and encourage students to do the same to make up for the lack of face-to-face interactions. So some of the negative comments that students had were, I don't get to see my fellow students and I don't get to physically see the instructor. I miss this. Because of this, the course is missing this valuable social component to it that's part of learning. So what instructors might want to do is talk a little bit more about themselves. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just here and there tell about your favorite sports team, or if you like to travel, little tidbits about what you did there, or little tidbits about your children if you have children, or your hobbies, and encourage students to do the same thing, especially early on in the course so that you guys can get to know one another. The content comes, you'll talk about the content, but don't be afraid, especially in the very beginning of the course, to just spend some time really just chit-chatting with one another so you can become comfortable with one another. And that will provide a nice groundwork for really digging deeper into the content as the course goes on. Give students a realistic preview of the course so they can decide whether or not to enroll, or at least to set their expectations appropriately. So in the organizational psychology literature, we talk about realistic job previews and how realistic job previews can increase job satisfaction. So not just telling people the good stuff about the job, but the bad stuff too, so that they can make an informed decision about whether or not they want to take that job. Because very often satisfaction or dissatisfaction is due to a mismatch between expectations and reality. So if we can control those expectations with our online courses, I think satisfaction might go up. Some students have to take the course, right? So sometimes they can't decide whether or not to enroll. But at least if you tell them this is what it's going to be like, their expectations are set accordingly. And another thing that I do that's an actual suggestion is 2 weeks before and 1 week before any of my online courses start, I'll send out the syllabus, I'll send out the link to the D2L site, whatever I can at that point, so that students know what's going on before the class starts. So that's our presentation. Here's a list of references for you should you need them. And thank you very much for your attention.